You're running a shop floor, not a Pinterest interest board or a fantasy football league. You don't need inspiration, you need things to work. So welcome to Build Your Way, a podcast from Cetec ERP. This is a show for manufacturers who are in it every day, from quoting and shipping jobs to troubleshooting quality and material shortages, all while staying a step ahead of what's next. We bring you stories from the field, lessons that stick, and strategies that actually scale to help you build better. Let's get to work.
My name is Taylor Wagen. I am one of the current owners at Cetec ERP, and I function as COO.
I'm Scott Ryan. I'm a senior consultant, one of the directors firmly in the D-suite, and help coordinate some of our marketing efforts.
In this episode today, we're going to talk about our history as a company, which I've been with Cetec for, 26 years now. And the company goes well before me, all the way back into the 70s. So we're talking about our existence and, transformations and all the different iterations of our little company and how it became what it is today, Cetec ERP.
You've been around Cetec a long time. Cetec has been around longer than you. Where did we come from?
This is like with light research from me talking to some of the people who were there at the beginning, and my memory is notoriously.
Was it always called Cetec?
I believe it was, but there have been several product names that have moved through this. So here's my understanding. In the early 70s, electronics distribution, was like Radio Shack, except for company use. Was very segmented. Every city or region had, one-to-many electronics distributors, and they would purchase the parts, and then you'd go there and say, I need, 20,000 capacitors that look like this and all these things. And Cetec was one of these companies, actually. They were, I think, a radio parts distribution company. So they have, just tons and tons of these teensy tiny parts hanging around in a warehouse getting dusty, and they're selling them. One of the employees had the brilliant idea that they could use computers to track all their inventory and then automatically adjust the accounting when that happened. Obviously not maybe the first time anybody had ever thought of this, but at that time, that type of software was something you wrote yourself. And so they wrote it themselves on I think it was actually a IBM mainframe, and they did that using a tool called Business Basic. And then it worked. They tracked their parts, they tracked their accounting values, and the person was actually, I think, the controller at the company, which is, not quite a CFO, but more than an accountant, right? I manage the books. Other companies in the space wanted to do the same thing, and they basically said, hey, can we have your software? Which, was written, by this little group. And so they said, sure. And after they did that a few times, they basically spun out into their own company, launched a company to do that. And that became, I think it was Cetec Radio Parts, and that became Cetec Software. Now, I wouldn't give a kidney on that, but I think that's all accurate. And Bob Atkinson,
a bit of the godfather, bit of a legend.
He's the legend. He's the guy. He's a great guy. So the product, when they launched Cetec Software, in what is clearly one of the greatest marketing moves of all time, they referred to the product as Automated Information Directory System. I think it I'm not really good on what it stood for. I'm very good on what the acronym was, which was AIDS. And this is, again, in the early 70s, so we didn't yet have the AIDS epidemic, but
It was fine then.
yeah, it was very quickly not fine. And they changed the name. I think they just rolled back to never mind, we're just going to call it Cetec.
Yeah, they thought it was real clever for a decade.
True story. Later on in the 90s, we launched a product by the name of Tsunami, which turned out to be also maybe a terrible, I don't know, for those
A little look into the future.
Marketing genius here. So yeah, that's very long ago. This is the 70s, and I did at one point see a brochure from this early Cetec era. And have you seen it? The picture of those people wearing their like sweet polyester bell bottoms, happily standing in front of like a keyboard that's on like a stand, with like a terminal. And like there's a computer behind a window. And it was like, man, it's amazing.
Great.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's pretty great. When did Cetec, so if it started in mostly distribution, where did manufacturing start to play in?
Question. So in the 80s and the 90s, your distributors began to roll up. They one bought another, and then they just kept gobbling. So they increased in scale dramatically through the 80s and into the 90s. And you have like, now, you go to DigiKey, you go to Arrow, you go to Avnet, you go to these massive, massive distributors. And so as this was happening, these small regional shops either played that game and got very big, and a few of our customers did, or they began to do other things. So they would do stuff like kitting, where like, oh, we know you buy all these parts and then you separate them out and you use them for manufacturing. So we'll actually pre-make a kit for you, and that becomes a value-add service. Or they begin saying, oh, well, nobody wants to make, the cabling, or the wire harness. So they start, they move into light manufacturing as a way of staying alive. And so then they began to ask for features in Cetec, which they would add. And so as all of this is happening for, basically 15, 20 years in the 80s and 90s, we just kept adding features. And this is all before my time. So by the time I was interacting with Cetec, manufacturing was like a baked-in normal thing that they had spent 15 to 20 years accumulating manufacturing features around that. And I guess the odd thing about Cetec is that it has like a sneaky secret, really great feature set for distributors, because now we focus so much on manufacturers that we have all this excellence for distributors. There's just we don't talk about. But,
Well, and that's distribution has become a wholly separate game.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So what was walk me through, tell me about the state of Cetec when you joined. How did you come to, I think this is a great story. What were you doing before Cetec? What was the state of Cetec? What was your role? And then, gonna try to lead over into when you and Brent.
My highly qualified self. I was a ladies' shoe salesman at Dillard's, and I sold shoes.
That doesn't surprise me with that shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think that's a compliment. I sold ladies' shoes in the mall, and it was the 90s, so it was sort of a .com frenzy at the time in 1999, and I was offered not quite a job. Somebody I sold shoes to asked me, "Do you like selling ladies' shoes?" And I was like, "Frankly, it's not what I dream of." It's like, well, that's funny. You seem to really enjoy it, and you're great. I was like, well, I like taking care of people. I like helping them find shoes that are whatever. And it's like, okay. The next day, this lady's mom came in. She'd been shopping with her mom for shoes. Her mom came in and said, "Hey, can you send me your resume? My daughter, who you sold shoes to yesterday, wants to send your resume around and place you in a different job." It's like, sure, here's my resume. And she was obviously attempting to hire me for her company, which was a company called Cetec, and that was Shannon. Thanks, Shannon. All these years later, really appreciate you going to bat for me there. And so, yeah, Cetec was a company that launched in the 90s by a guy named Fred Murphy. And Fred's dad was one of these Cetec customers that was doing distribution and manufacturing. And Fred he was a computer guy. So he was like, oh, I can take this old software, because it started in the 70s, it's Business Basic running on a mainframe or, whatever. And I can take the data, move it to a database, and actually put a web front end on it, which at the time was, pretty innovative. You think how far it is now, their ERP products, they're still not accessible in a browser. You have to have, like a connector and a special app. And he's putting it all on, Netscape at the time, Netscape Navigator, you know. And so they had this thing. He did it for his dad's company, which was Wofford Electronics. And then he was like, well, I'm going to start a company and do this for other Cetec companies. And so he launched a company called TechX. It's Tech-X. And they had just gotten interest from a very, very large company doing a couple $2 billion a year, doing distribution and a little bit of manufacturing. And so they were trying to figure out how they're going to ramp up to support this customer and continue sales. And so I ultimately was hired by Fred and Shannon to handle training. I was going to be training and then, do the rest of the things. So they hired me for that. I left Ladies Shoes, got hired at TechX, and Brent Barton, who is, one of the other founder owners of our current team here, he actually had started a year before me in high school still. And he was a tech guy writing code and dealing with all those things. So we both started in the late 90s there. Anyway, TechX ended up in 2002 acquiring Cetec. And so then they merged. And then Fred, I think, retired, moved on in, I guess, 2006. Brent took over the company. And then I transitioned into kind of ownership with Brent in the next, 5-ish years. But we had this tech state where we have this new stuff, that is inherited from TechX, where we're taking data out of a legacy ERP environment, running what we call brain processes to move things over on like hourly or nightly or weekly, and then, presenting it. And then we write back to, this legacy product, which maintains actually the authoritative data around all this. And it was a lot. It's very complicated. You got to get your timing right. And there's some things that really just exist. All the accounting, for example, was just in this legacy product. And we really started down the path of a full transition away from that around 2009. Around 2009, we still had a separation, but we started, I guess, what we're currently on pathwise of writing everything into, fully web, cloud-friendly stuff.
Why? Like, beyond just we have all this access to cool, new, modern technology, like there was some motivation, right, to move away from what was highly custom, complex, difficult to support tech for businesses into, a whole new stack of.
For us, it was a little bit of survival.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't. Your technical debt at some point accumulates so much that you have nothing useful. So we had technical requirement. You can't sell; it's too expensive. Like you need essentially this large computing, and then you have all this old tech with just it's encumbered with expenses. And if we can move it all onto open source and leverage all these things, and then we can support it more easily, we can sell it more easily, we can just cut costs by a factor of 10. And it's just going to work better. There was I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, or if you're looking for what was happening on the customer side.
No, that was really more what I was getting at. There is a whole backstory of the customer side.
There was a backstory where a specific customer was they were in a crisis where their crucial account was leaving because they were upset with their quality. And so they had said, well, we'll fix all of that. And so then they wanted us to kind of come in and do a little bit of a rescue. So Brent and I spent a week on site. I'd fly home. He'd fly out, spend a week on site. And so we slapped hands in the airport for, 6 months, 7 months. And we wrote a whole lot of tools basically to enforce traceability, quality, anything you need to survive a medical audit for all these production cases. And that became ultimately, in many ways, the start of what are the new patterns we're going to have. And then it's another 7 years of furiously writing code before we took our first customer live with no legacy code whatsoever. and that was 2016. And they were also in a situation where they had to, right? Because I don't think anybody wants to be the first. Well, we're the first. Yeah, trust me. How many times have you landed a plane? Oh, never. It's my first time. So yeah, they were required, and we took them live, and then spent at least 2 to 3 more years again furiously writing features that were missing that turned out to be critical and crucial, and so it was a solid decade of typing frenzy. And then we finally got to the point where we said, okay, engineering is and it never slows down exactly, but now we can really go and target new customers pretty happily and work on telling the world about the product. So
yeah, so you're writing code, and in the meantime, you're building the plane as you're flying it.
Yeah.
So you're trying to navigate what is the ERP market, how do we position ourselves, how do we provide a minimum viable product, how do we market and sell, and then how do we support these customers, and yeah, so that's kind of where I maybe stepped in, is towards the tail end.
What year was that?
I think 2019.
19. Okay.
I think so. Maybe
pre-COVID.
I forget. I've had a lot of concussions. So, yeah, pre-COVID. Where I had stepped in, and still very much like the office was a coding cave.
Yeah.
And with a couple of support guys who also were doing sales, and so like they just know every business. They have to work through and become experts in every piece of the software. We're helping to develop code to customer spec. Like, we're trying to help learn how to product manage and abstract features to fit into a design pattern, so that it's not just, so that we don't end up with more technical debt, right? So that was kind of a fast and loose time.
That whole picture there that says a lot about why we are the way that we are. That for several years there's basically Brent and I, and then 1 or 2 other people, and we aren't selling. We're not selling at all. We're not marketing. We're very involved with the customers that we have, and we write a lot of code, but we're not translating from like, oh, this is your product understanding and your coding are very married, because we've both now had over a decade in helping customers solve very specific issues that they're fighting, and so we're writing into like, what is the abstract case across the customers that we know, and like expressing that in code, which is we're, I guess, still very much on that playing catch up on, like, well, how do you actually tell people about it? How do you actually sell it? How do you support them well?
Well, I remember some point during COVID, by the time I was selling and implementing and I helped bring that customer over when they had a little terminal within the web app.
Oh yeah.
And we'd sit on calls, and they would call it Black Cetec, and it kind of just made me cringe a little bit. It's like, I don't think you can say that. So I come on, and in this place of, we're still furiously writing features, still like we're doing all things to all people, selling, demoing, doing trade shows.
The same, like 5 people are doing everything.
Yeah. But we get to this point, so we have this kind of core group there, and then we get to this point where, I don't know, like some sales meeting, we realize like we're not getting slapped in the face with major features that we're missing anymore. We have this very like broad product that covers 90% of what a manufacturing business needs, and now it goes incredibly deep into some very niche areas, right? But what I think we found ourselves doing is like, we're writing small features to bridge gaps and make processes faster, things easier, but we're not missing anything major. That I think also was an inflection point in just the growth and the finances of the company. Is like,
Yeah.
we're bootstrapped.
Yep. Always have been.
Yeah. So we now have maybe a little bit extra dollars for marketing, and so that was two kind of important things happening at the same time.
That was that whole like product scope was really defined by, our customers saying, "Hey, we desperately need these things," and their version of what they wanted was surely driven by use case. Like, well, we need this. And it's like, well, a more rational ERP approach or more traditional ERP approach would be like, oh, that's a separate product. That's not part of ERP. What you really need is, something else. And you can integrate it to the ERP system. ERP is really going to focus on the accounting. We're going to do that. And then like all these other things are going to kind of live in, you need CRM, or you need, you got to have a QMS, or you got to have, that's an MRP product.
Yeah. And I hear it talked about, like, you've got your ERP up here.
Yeah.
And then you've got your inventory management system here,
Right,
and then your MES and QMS down here. Like the MES has to, you've got to,
and you got to try to integrate it all.
You have to have this whole kind of seamless ecosystem of all these different expensive products.
And we accidentally, I say accidentally, because we didn't set out from like a, formulate a product, go get funding, and then go build that thing. Ours is accidentally in that our customers say, we need these things. We say, that makes good sense. We understand what you're doing, or, they say, hey, all right, we have to have this, and we go put our heads together and design a process. And so all that stuff is like, it becomes more of a platform for, these customers that we've worked with for so long to say, hey, like all that just kind of lives and integrates in here. And so now, like, I think is it on the trade show banner where you've got all your like 3-letter meaningless acronyms,
yes,
right? But that is like who we are.
Well, we started, the original like web shell of the web platform, the original, iteration of this in 2009, 2010 was production and quality. It was QMS. It was like, let's check the boxes for ISO 9001, and with like they're still using legacy Cetec for accounting, and then you build a full financial suite. So now you're a real ERP, but you have a really robust manufacturing, like shop floor tracking, production management, and you grow into like people need scheduling, so schedule this way, and and so on, and like MRP grows. And so you now the way I think that we think about brain is different, right? It's now, how do these different pieces connect together,
right?
And then how do you,
but in one thing instead of having to have 5 or 6.
Well, and then you come across an instance of like, well, one customer, even in the same like vertical of manufacturing, one wire harness shop wants to do something one way, another one wants to do it slightly different, and so you've got to.
So it's very valid.
Both very valid. But you've got to have a way to accommodate both. But then even stepping outside of that is like, okay, well, what happens when you get into process manufacturing or a machine shop and or industrial equipment, some kind of OEM manufacturer? Well, you have the core basic requirements to run a manufacturing company, but then you have these different shades.
They have modes or
different modes that, like, you've got to be able to support all of those without finding yourself in a ton of technical debt.
Right.
Again. So how do you, because I think we still are very much, I think you defend the product a lot.
I've become the person that says no to requests. That's like a hat I've decided I'm going to wear. Because finding the line between, hey, somebody's on site helping a customer, it's the classic go live, and everybody thinks they know everything ahead of time. You'd go live, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, totally missed this. They never even brought it up. We've had calls for 6 months. First time they mention it, and it's absolutely critical. And so then you're like, okay, what's critical? why are they doing it this way? How are we going? And sometimes people will come up with something that's like, oh, well, you could do it these other ways, but there's too much friction. It's too slow. So let's scope it. Let's get a feature and like pull some people into a room and say, hey, have you guys run into situations like this? If we were going to design something for that, what would it look like? And so then we say, yes, we'll add a feature. Maybe the customer will pay their 4 hours and we'll spend the other 35 or whatever by the time you're done developing it and testing it and doing all these things. And we'll enter the product and then we'll support it forever and everybody gets to use it. So new features get added that way. But a lot of the times that same thing will happen. The customer's like, oh, there's got to be this way. We need this. And it's like, that's crazy. And that can be like really, really tough to communicate that, like, I know, Roger over, in his little cubicle insists that this is the only way. But we're quite confident that that is not true. And this is a better way. And we'd love to push you in this direction.
That comes up, I think, a lot. Like I've experienced it a lot in a couple of ways. One is the small business space. These are all entrepreneurs. And so they're very passionate and they've thought through the way they want to do it.
Yeah.
It's different than some of the core system design, which makes that like you can't just upend the way that we've done things because that breaks it for everybody else or risks breaking it for everybody else. The other place that I see that is people that have become entrenched in processes is so used to and accustomed to doing it this way. I'm like, I don't want to take steps back for those people.
The most recent time this happened is I think Noah is working with somebody, and what they're asking for specifically is like, hey, I want to be able to scan a barcode on this page and have it match another barcode. That's how that was initially framed. It's like, what page, what barcode, and what's the other barcode? There's literally no frame of reference, We that's a word salad, right? That's like, what are we doing? And it's like, okay. So he goes back, gets some more details, comes back, and is like, okay, they were able to articulate this time that they're trying to validate that they have the right part. And they want to be able to scan a bag label, which, when you pick parts and you will let you generate a cute little label and put it on those, like a little baggies, you put them in there. And so then when you move it out of the warehouse to the floor, somebody can say, oh, I know what these parts are. Right? They want to be able to scan that label and scan something else that says that the label is correct. And it's like, we still can't do anything with that. That doesn't make sense. So go back again. He's really trying to pull like ideas from these folks. They have something, but it's hard to articulate. I respect that. So poor Noah has to like go and do all these interviews. He's going back, trying to figure it out. And what it comes to in the end is they're trying to make sure that when they pick and like create their little kit, when they bag these parts up, that somebody else can validate that it was right. And the way they were framing it is they want to be able to go to our pick parts screen essentially and scan the bag labels and have it like show that they're the correct things. It's like, oh, they're reinventing a kit on it.
Uh-huh. But they don't know it. They don't know that exists.
So getting to the point of like strip down the feature request to the actual basic bare thing, what are you trying to do? Then we can say, oh, you don't want that. What you want is there's actually a whole like feature for that specifically. We just need to help you see it now.
Well, yeah. It's an iceberg. They've arrived at this conclusion for what they think makes sense based on what they know about.
I'm trying to come up with a Titanic joke right now.
I know. I was trying to give you something. Yeah. So people arrive at a solution, and you've got to like unbury what. Yeah. Well, like what are you've put thought into this, so now we have to like untangle, understand, and then figure out how this makes sense within the product. What's the good, efficient, right way to do this? Is the dialectic of like, well, my job as a consultant, as a sales guy, is to advocate for my people.
Yeah.
For my customer.
Take care of them.
And to try to present their case in a way of, hey, this is why it makes sense, not just for them, but then how do I position that as a strategic thing for us sales wise, and so trying to create this whole business case for this feature, but also at the same time, like in the back of my head, I was like, that doesn't make sense. There's got to be a better way. So also coming and saying like, look, if we have another way to do this, then like we can handle. Yeah,
there's some platonic process, that somebody's doing, and it's likely to be shared across Socrates. It's likely to be shared across other customers. So understanding it to the point that is like, we can solve your problem and hopefully more than just your problem.
Yeah. That's kind of fun and difficult. Like saying nobody. I often wonder, like, do you like being the no guy? Like you're the opposite of Jim Carrey's Yes Man.
Yeah. What was that?
You're the no dude.
I'm the no. Yeah. There was a Dr. No.
Dr. No.
Dr. No, which is probably a better movie anyways. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I don't love it. I mean, it's nicer to be the yes man, but I do. I don't want to support junk forever. I'd like to support features that are awesome forever. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
I know.
So that's kind of the history, a lot of the whys.
Yeah. How did we get here?
Yeah. Let's talk about like where's the company at today?
Where's the company at today in the sense of what are we working on right now and where are we trying to go? Yeah. Like, I mean, we are attempting to, so we think we have a great product. Obviously we believe in ourselves.
Well, and we like, so we talked about this inflection point of, okay, we have more than the MVP, the minimum viable product. Yes. We have a robust product that goes very deep into manufacturing. And now seemingly we can figure out how to throw a little bit. We have some extra dollars, one or two, to start figuring out marketing, sales. And so like,
we're the classic, in consulting, you walk into something and you see things that other people wouldn't see because, it's your own water, so you don't notice things. We walk into companies and we see, oh, you guys make a great thing. And, you're not going to grow because nobody's going to know about it. Right. And so, but it's the classic, the person in charge, the founder is focused on doing that thing excellently. And so that's what they do. That, I mean, to a large extent, that's who we are. Brent and I we're nerds. We write code, we hang out, we do that stuff. And we focus on all of those things. And you look at our head count, we're way more engineering than anything else. And that's maybe based on our history, a requirement as to how we became who we are, how do we get here, and also an accident of history and probably our own stupidity. But at this point, now the next thing is to grow as much as we can. And the best thing for our customers, I know Brent believes this as well, is for us to get as big as possible. The more of us, the more users we have, the more we have to invest on the things that make the product easier and faster and, better, faster, more productive, whatever we're going to say here.
Yeah.
Right. So that is a thing. And you can have a great product, but you have to tell people about it. So, here we are now trying to race and catch up and figure out, how do you actually tell people about things? How do you help them use it? How do you, all these, sales and marketing things? How do you let them, a demo? How do you show somebody? A software demo has got to be one of the worst things on earth. There's somebody talking to you and they click on screens and I do not have the attention span for this.
Would you say that an ERP podcast is the second worst thing?
Here was the podcast. This came about. I was talking to somebody who had recently left they'd sold and were now doing something else. And they were a QMS, quality management system, which we have a significant part of the QMS in our product already because our customers need some level of QMS functionality. And he was talking about how he'd been head of marketing for this company. He said, "Oh yeah, the podcast was the best thing we did. because we could talk about things, and then, that would be, the way that we would figure out what content to have.
Yeah.
So it all just came out of that. It was like, oh, okay. And
Well, it's interesting to kind of hear sort of the narrative of like, well, we were you and Brent and Jordan and, Tanner and then me, like everything was built around trying to take care of customers and was like built working along side by side. And I think that's like found its way into like just the ethos of Cetec. And even for me, as we were kind of shaping, like, what kind of content do we want to put out for people? It's like, well, we really want to avoid just generic marketing things. We want content that's valuable and meaningful. And we want to, like, a podcast is an interesting way to
hopefully interesting
to help solve problems or help like unlock and solve, address pain points that's like our customer base is facing, because that will, be impactful beyond just that, right?
The piece of like we do ERPalooza. We have a user conference. We love puns. We love terrible puns more than good puns. And so our user conference, ERPalooza, which we do, in theory, it's annual or every 2 years.
Biannual.
Biannual meaning every 2, not twice a year.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot of work. It's a pain in the butt, quite frankly. And so we have talked ourselves out of hosting it a number of times. And we are redoubling our efforts to host, and we're doing it again this October. And it's a thing that doesn't, the only benefit is really like we get some time with our customers, so we're a little bit more human, because, it's really easy to, like on support to say when somebody says no, I say no to your feature request or your change, because it will break, 9 out of 10 other customers, desired things. And here's the way we think you should do it.
And they're in just inherently stressful situations.
Correct.
So, like, yeah, they're panicking because they're trying to do their job and like ship product.
That's right. And so then to have like, oh, I know who these people are. Like they are trying to take care of me. And when they suggest this or they ask a question for clarifying, they're not just trying to blow me off. Like, reestablish the human connection. That's good for us. And it's good for, us, since we all do support, that we know who's on the other end. We're like, oh yeah, it's Rhonda. I remember Rhonda.
Yeah.
Like that's great. But it's really just about training, right? It's 2 days of ERP classes, because we have all these things baked in, features like that kit audit thing I was talking about, and people just don't know. So you come, you spend 2 days, and you learn, you get that. And podcast for us is also a way of telling people about, oh, look, there's a thing in here. Maybe you don't need it today, but you'll learn about it, and then when that situation comes up, hey, they said something about that feature. It's here somewhere. So communication is hard.
It is very difficult. It's very difficult.
In terms of why we want to do a podcast, because it's not exactly great fun. It's not a thing we're going to do like on our own. Scott, you want to do a podcast tonight?
It's the thing that's the thing you put on when you're struggling to sleep.
Really?
Sure.
Podcast about ERP
demo. Yeah.
But it does give us a way of talking to our customers, and there are things that are in the product that we want them to know about. And it's a way of us having content that is hopefully useful to put onto our website for, telling prospective customers about us. Here's what we are, here's what we do. So there's some just need for
the throughput of like Cetec grew out of trying to take care of customers and trying to support customers side by side, writing features for them, right? Trying to offer like an affordable, approachable ERP system. That there's some like strategy to that for us, but also it's just like small businesses need a system to support their business, right? And so, but then partnering that with stories, I think, is where it becomes interesting, right?
Yeah.
Is
you hear the details about something. It's like history. Everybody's like, oh, I hated history. They made me memorize dates.
I want I don't care about I don't care about the dates of Genghis Khan,
Right.
but the stories are fascinating, and the order of events and how that shapes things matters. And it unlocks things, right? So being able to sit with partners and actual business partners, thank you, and customers, and ask them questions about, well, what are you struggling with? How have you solved these things? How, like, beyond just Cetec, but how are you growing and improving your business?
Yeah, it's we have this view that we often go inside so many different companies. Been in hundreds of companies, right? And we get to see patterns. We get to see things like that. It's very hard for a customer to do that. You have how many jobs in your life, and that's your space.
That's why millennials go to a therapist,
because they've had 4 or 5 jobs,
sometimes more, or sometimes none. Well, like, I don't know what I don't know, and this is the water I'm swimming in. I need somebody to shine a light on these things. I need another perspective. Or, I need it. Maybe I don't know that I need it, but yeah, you get this other angle, this other way of seeing things that, like, well, let me bring this other experience. I'm like, let's take in these other, let's take in more data on how to deal with things.
I'm not a big school person. You know this about me. I rushed through high school, I rushed through college, and I was like, I'm never going back to school. I like to learn, happy to read, happy to do things, but school specifically is not a joy for me. My wife loves school. But
the doctor.
Yeah. And I remember hearing about MBA school, and people, that's the thing, business people, they go to MBA, they get an executive MBA, they do one of these things, and they're like, oh man.
I thought when I was in middle school, I was going to be in the MBA.
Really? Yeah. Even at your height?
I'd go to, well, I don't know, I lived in small town, middle of nowhere, so, thought I'd go to Duke, and then the MBA.
Dreams die hard, don't they?
It was a soft death. I just
still holding on a little bit.
I woke up one day and it's like, that's probably not going to happen.
Oh, well, yeah. The earlier you learn, the better.
It was an easy transition, actually.
So Andy Grove, I think it was Andy Grove. It's one of the early Intel people. He would teach at Stanford, and me with my predisposition against school, I'm like, oh, good grief, what are you going to do? And I remember hearing about his class, and what his class was, he would give a scenario of, like, here's where we were, many from his own life. Here's the data we had. And then break people up into teams, which also another thing that's terrible about school. You get on teams, and then you're the only person that does all the work, and whatever that situation is, it's always atrocious. But in this case, they break into teams, and they have to make a plan. What would you do in the situation? And then they would present, and then he would tell them what they actually did and how it worked out. And everything. Oh, that I get it. That was like a light bulb moment for me of, like, I understand those, like, transition points you might learn with wisdom, or, like, it's experience that you wouldn't otherwise have. And so you're gaining all that, and, like, oh, okay, school, also great class. There's something to that you get with walking into a bunch of different situations, company after company after company after company. And so then when they have this, like, okay, we can solve that meta case with a feature, but then you have to help people understand what that is or use it. And I would like, podcast-wise, to be able to say, hey, here's how we have solved this type of problem, and that helps people they can use that and run with it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an MBA, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Apprenticeship MBA.
Yeah. Shooting guard.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
This has been our first episode of our new Cetec ERP podcast. What we are going to be doing in the future is sometimes interviewing customers, letting them tell us about what they do and what problems they have run into and hopefully solved. We'll be interviewing some of our own, cast of characters, internal Cetec people, meet people internally and externally, try to hit as many scenarios and pieces that we can that will be useful. And all that centers around small and medium size manufacturing specifically. So
we're on all the social media platforms, minus TikTok. So far. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, however you consume media.
we have an email, podcast@Cetec ERP. If there are topics that you specifically want us to talk about or do a deep dive into, send us an email and we'll do our best to throw that on the schedule. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. And until then, continue to build your way.